There were 3 glasses in the sink. I only used one. Marin doesn't drink water before bed. She always says it messes with her dreams. And yet, there they were. 3. One with lipstick. One cloudy from tap. And one, short, heavy, rimmed in condensation like it had been filled with whiskey just an hour ago. I stood there staring at them, still wearing my work shoes, backpack sliding off my shoulder. My brain didn't register anything except, why 3? Then I heard it, the faint creak of the upstairs floorboards. It wasn't loud, just soft enough to make my spine tighten. She said she'd be out. Some last-minute work drinks. I wasn't expecting her until midnight. But now, there was someone upstairs. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I didn't storm up like in the movies. I just stared at the sink and realized something that made my stomach knot. She'd cleaned everything else. The counter was wiped. The pan from breakfast gone. The sponge dry and put away. But those glasses? Left like a breadcrumb. Or maybe a dare. The creak came again. This time followed by a second, quicker one. 2 steps. Someone walking across the hallway, toward our bedroom. I opened the fridge. Just to do something normal. There was takeout inside. Thai. 2 orders. She hates Thai. I closed the door and checked my phone. No new texts. Nothing from her since 6:17 p.m. Be home late. Don't wait up, Yellowheart. The thing is, I always wait up. Even when she says not to. Even when she pretends to forget I do. I sit on the couch and pretend to watch old shows until I hear her keys in the door. I greet her with sleepy eyes and a bowl of grapes because she always says she's hungry after wine. I pretend not to notice when her heels are scuffed or her makeup is newer than it was that morning. But tonight was different. Because tonight, there was no wine breath. No heels. No text saying stuck in traffic. Just 3 glasses. And footsteps. So I walked to the stairs, careful not to let the old boards groan under my weight. Halfway up, I stopped. She was laughing. Not a big laugh. Not her TV is funny laugh. Not even her polite one. It was the kind of laugh she gave me years ago when we'd lie under cheap sheets, making dumb inside jokes in the dark. It was soft, familiar, private, and she wasn't alone. That's when I felt it. Not anger, not betrayal, not even panic. Clarity. Like every stupid moment I ignored came rushing back all at once. Her saying, "Kyle's just a work friend," without me even asking. Her phone suddenly living face down. The perfume I smelled on our pillow last week that wasn't hers. Her standing up for him, against me, when I said he was getting too comfortable texting her at 1 a.m. She made me feel crazy. She let me feel crazy. And I still would have forgiven her. I swear I would have. If not for what happened next. Because when I took that final step and looked through the crack in the bedroom door, I saw something that made me whisper 5 quiet words. The 5 words that shattered everything. Not a scream. Not a question. Just a sentence I didn't even realize I said out loud. She heard me. He heard me. And everything collapsed from there. I didn't think you'd come. That's what I said. 5 stupid words. Not who is he? Not what are you doing? Not even the louder, Messier things screaming in my throat. Just that. Soft. Pathetic. Like I was interrupting something I had no right to witness. She froze. He froze. I couldn't see much, just silhouettes in dim light, but it was enough. Her shirt was half off one shoulder, and he was standing a little too close to the bed. The way they both turned toward the door, together, like a single guilty organism, said more than anything else could. I couldn't see his face clearly, but he was tall, pale, dark hair. I'd never seen him before. Not Kyle. Not anyone I knew. She didn't move toward me. She didn't even pull her shirt back up right away. Just stood there, blinking. Processing. Probably weighing which lie would stick best. "Emery, it's not what you think," she said. And just like that, the script began. The oldest one in the world. I could almost hear her flipping through the internal Rolodex of excuses. He's a friend. It's a misunderstanding. I'm overreacting. I misread it. They're rehearsing a play. Maybe I hit my head and imagined it all. I turned away and walked downstairs, not because I wanted to run, but because my knees were buzzing with adrenaline and I was afraid I'd collapse. I needed to be on solid ground. I don't know what I needed. She followed, of course. She always follows when things slip out of her control. That's her specialty, recentering the narrative. As she came into the kitchen, her voice turned soft, almost maternal. "Listen, please, it was just a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I didn't want to hurt you. We weren't even. Nothing happened yet. Yet. That word echoed so loudly I wanted to laugh. I stared at the glasses again. 3. Still there, mocking me like punctuation marks at the end of a very short chapter. He didn't come downstairs. I guess he knew there was no graceful way out of this scene. Maybe he thought he was being noble. Or maybe he was too cowardly to face the fallout. Either way, I was glad. If I had to hear his voice, I might have broken something. Not him, I'm not that guy. But something. A plate. A chair. My own self-control. She kept talking. Something about how lonely she'd been. How I'd checked out emotionally. How it wasn't about sex, it was about connection. How she just needed to feel seen. Heard. I could see her building a defense before I'd even said a word. The irony? I would have listened. I always do. I'm the guy who stays up to hear every feeling, every thought, every late-night spiral. I'm the guy who holds you when you cry and doesn't ask why until you're ready. I've always been that guy. But apparently, it wasn't enough. I finally asked, "Who is he?" Her eyes flinched just slightly. "Doesn't matter," she whispered. That told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't some mistake at a conference or some alcohol-fueled lapse. It was someone with a name. Someone she saw enough times to not want to say his. I think what broke me most wasn't the betrayal. It was how little surprise she showed. Like she'd expected this moment eventually. Like she'd rehearsed it. And somewhere in her mind, she'd already begun rewriting the version where I was the problem. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded, grabbed my coat, and left the house without another word. I drove to the 24-hour grocery store just to sit in the parking lot under fluorescent lights and feel like the world was still real. I watched the night shift stock boy push carts in the rain for 20 minutes while I just sat there gripping the steering wheel. I kept thinking, what if I hadn't opened the glove box? What if I hadn't come home early? Would I still be living in that polite little lie she wrapped around me like a blanket? But the real question, the one that's kept me up since, is, how many times did she choose him over me before I ever noticed? I didn't go home that night. Didn't even think about it. I drove until my gas light came on, then parked in a random motel lot outside of town and just sat there with the engine off, the silence in the car broken only by the occasional crack of the plastic dashboard settling in the cold. My phone lit up over and over. Missed calls from her. A few texts. All vague, desperate things like, "Please come back. We need to talk." And the worst one, "This doesn't have to ruin us." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't wanna, I did want to. I wanted to scream into the phone, to demand an explanation that made any of this make sense. But I knew if I heard her voice, I'd fold. That's what always happened. She knew how to disarm me, to turn her betrayals into shared misunderstandings. She didn't lie, she protected my feelings. She didn't cheat, she needed clarity. Her gift wasn't just the lie, it was making me feel complicit in it. When I finally did go home, it was around 5:30 the next morning. The house looked normal, maybe too normal, like someone had vacuumed chaos out of the carpet and lit a candle to cover its scent. She was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket like a child who'd been scolded and sent to nap. For a second, I just stood in the doorway watching her breathe. I still loved her. That was the worst part. I didn't feel rage or hate or anything righteous. I just felt lost, like I was standing in the ruins of a house I helped build, realizing too late I'd been sealing cracks with paint and pretending that made it safe. She stirred when I put my keys down, sat up fast, rubbed her eyes like she was waking from a bad dream, and said my name with a kind of raw relief I wasn't ready for. "Emery, thank God. I didn't know if you'd come back." I told her I wasn't here to make decisions. I just needed a shower and my laptop for work. That was the first time I noticed the look in her eyes had changed. Not fear, not sadness. Strategy. She wasn't trying to win me back. She was trying to manage me. Like I was a client on the verge of walking away from a deal, and she just needed the right pitch to save it. We sat down later that evening. She made tea like we were just having a normal Tuesday night chat. She said the man from that night, Jasper, was no one serious. A friend from work, from a different office. They'd only seen each other a few times. She used that phrase like it was supposed to soften the blow. It wasn't serious. Like it mattered whether she was emotionally invested or just bored and impulsive. I asked why she let it happen at all. She looked me straight in the face and said, "Because I felt invisible." That's the word that gutted me. Invisible. I'd spent years loving her, checking in, making late-night runs when she had cravings, buying that stupid brand of almond milk that expires in 3 days, but tastes cleaner, sitting through her favorite sad documentaries, holding her when she got panic attacks, and somehow, I'd made her feel invisible. Like everything I did didn't even register as love anymore. Just background noise. She started crying. Real tears, messy and loud. Not her usual graceful sobs that made people want to console her. These were ugly, raw, hiccuping cries. And for a second, I wanted to believe she was sorry. I wanted to believe this meant something could be rebuilt. But then she said something that flipped the floor out from under me. I just wish you'd fought for me sooner. Fought. For her. Like this was a battle she chose to escalate, and I had failed her by not anticipating the attack. I didn't even reply. I just walked into our bedroom, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed where I had no idea how many of their whispers still lingered in the sheets. I slept on the floor that night, not because I was trying to prove a point, but because I couldn't bear to lie where someone else had stood. And that was the beginning of the shift. Not the cheating itself, but the way she started rewriting the history of our marriage in real time. Suddenly, I was the distant one. Suddenly, I was the emotionally unavailable husband who didn't listen. She started floating these little trial balloons of blame, tiny comments dropped into conversation to test whether I'd push back. And I didn't, because I was still in shock, still spinning in this purgatory between heartbreak and delusion. But I knew one thing. The rules were changing, and I wasn't the one writing them anymore. She started leaving her laptop open after that night. Like some gesture of trust, a twisted performance of transparency. But that was the thing about Marin. When she wanted to manipulate you, she didn't raise her voice. She opened a door just wide enough for you to feel free walking through it, even when the whole room was rigged to collapse. I wasn't going to look. I swear I wasn't. I hated the idea of snooping, of being that guy. But the human brain does strange things when it's been hurt. It starts seeking validation not from hope, but from confirmation. You don't want to believe the worst. You just want to stop feeling crazy. It happened on a Thursday night. She was in the shower. I walked into the living room, and there it was, her MacBook glowing softly on the coffee table, Word doc open, half a glass of wine next to it. I didn't even mean to glance at the screen, but I did, and what I saw made my chest clamp like a vice. It wasn't an email. It wasn't even a message thread. It was a drafted letter. You make me feel electric. I didn't think I could still feel this way at 32. You make the silence in my marriage unbearable. I can't stop picturing you. Every night. Every time he touches me, I think about how much I want it to be you instead. I scrolled up. No greeting. No name. But I didn't need one. The way she wrote it, soft, breathless, like her heart was caught in every sentence. It wasn't meant for me. I knew how she wrote when she was speaking to me. Her words were usually polite, composed, filtered through some self-help article she once read about clear marital communication. But this was desire. This was confessional. Raw. She hadn't sent it. At least not that version. But that's what made it worse. She wrote it to feel it again. To stay immersed. To choose that version of herself. The one who felt alive because of someone else. She saved it. Probably reread it. I closed the screen and sat there on the couch like I'd been hit with a tranquilizer. I couldn't move. Couldn't even cry. Just sat in that dense, oxygen-starved feeling of realization that I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being erased. She came out of the bathroom 20 minutes later. Hair up in a towel, humming, like nothing was wrong. She kissed my head in passing and said she was going to sleep early because she had a long deck to finalize in the morning. That word again. Deck. As if she was ever working on actual presentations. I stared at her, still on the couch, and whispered. I read it. She stopped. Her body stiffened, mid-step. For a second, she said nothing. Then, you had no right. That was her first response. Not fear. Not guilt. Not shame. Just offense. Like I'd broken some sacred code by discovering her betrayal in the wrong format. I stood. You said you wanted honesty. I gave you mine. You said you wanted to fix this. And that's how you're spending your nights? She folded her arms, but I could see her eyes darting, calculating, bracing. It's not what it looks like. I was trying to process. That letter was a private exercise. It wasn't for him. It was for me. Oh, right, I laughed bitterly. A therapeutic fantasy. Is that what we're calling it now? She stepped closer. You think I'm proud of this? That I planned for things to happen this way? You think I don't hate myself for what I've done? But I didn't answer. Because I was too focused on the word she didn't use. Not what I almost did. Not what I was tempted to do. She said, what I've done. Present perfect. Completed action. It slipped out like it wasn't supposed to. Like her mouth finally outran her edits. I didn't say anything. I just walked past her and went to the guest room. It wasn't much, just an old futon and some books I hadn't opened since grad school, but it felt like mine. Or at least not theirs. I lay there staring at the popcorn ceiling for hours, wondering how many versions of me she'd rewritten in her head to make what she was doing seem okay. And for the first time, I started wondering if maybe she wasn't sorry because she missed me. Maybe she was only sorry she got caught. It happened the following week. I was still in the guest room, still pretending I was staying there for space, and not because every creak of our shared bed made my stomach turn. We hadn't talked much beyond logistics, trash day, groceries, whether either of us was going to be home for dinner. It was like living with a polite stranger in a hotel lobby. But the air had changed. Not tense, not even cold, just artificial. Like we were both holding a secret we knew the other already knew, but neither of us wanted to say it out loud again. Because once you say it enough times, it becomes real. I didn't plan on confronting him. I didn't even plan on seeing him. But the universe, or fate, or whatever cruel editor is writing my life lately, decided otherwise. It was Saturday morning. I went to a local coffee shop near the park, a place I used to love because it had bad Wi-Fi and good muffins. Just enough discomfort to force me to stop doom scrolling and actually read. I was standing in line, thinking about absolutely nothing, and I heard someone laugh. A short, smug, familiar kind of laugh. It froze me mid-step. I didn't recognize him right away. Just the voice. But when I turned, I saw them. Him and another guy, seated near the window, sipping something iced and overpriced, talking like their lives were entirely intact. I hadn't seen his face that night in the house. Only shadows. Only shapes. But now I knew. The jawline. The smirk. The watch that probably cost more than our couch. It was him. Jasper. And I was stunned by how normal he looked. Not some suave homewrecker or mysterious seducer. Just a guy. Beige jacket, clean sneakers, confident like nothing he did came with consequences. And that's what lit the fuse inside me. Not jealousy, not even grief. Just this unshakable anger that this man had trespassed through my life like it was a hallway. Left fingerprints on my marriage and walked away smiling. I didn't plan to say anything. I should have walked away. But my feet moved on their own. I walked straight to his table, looked him dead in the eyes, and asked, "You remember me?" He blinked, confused. Then recognition bloomed slowly across his face, followed by a very subtle, very deliberate smile. "Oh," he said, "you're the husband." He said it like he was naming a species, like I was some forgotten artifact of Marin's past. He didn't apologize. He didn't flinch. He just sipped his drink like we were in a movie, and I was the tragic character who showed up one scene too late. "You know," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking, "you could have left. You could have said no." He leaned back in his chair. "You're right," he said. "But she didn't want me to." And that was when I realized the full weight of it. It wasn't just that she betrayed me. It was that she had invited someone else into the sacred space we built and handed him the keys. And he accepted, not because he loved her, not because he cared about her, but because he could. I turned to leave. I didn't want to give him a show. But as I walked away, he called out, casual, cruel, too loud. "Hey man, for what it's worth, she talks about you like you're a ghost. Like you're there, but not really." I didn't turn back. I didn't give him the satisfaction. But I clenched my fists so hard my nails left crescent wounds in my palms. I went back to the car, shaking, and just sat there staring at the steering wheel for a long time, trying to understand how a person can hear you sob at 2 a.m. and still choose to become the reason you're broken. That night, I didn't speak to Marin. I couldn't. I was afraid of what would come out. But I did look at her differently. I watched her scroll on her phone, laugh at something on her screen, tuck her feet under the blanket like she was still someone soft and lovable and safe. And I realized something I never expected. She was mourning me in real time. Like I had already died in her eyes, and she was slowly trying to build a life around the hollow space I left behind. But I wasn't gone. Not yet. And the worst part? She didn't even seem to notice. The funny thing is, once you've seen your partner as a stranger, it doesn't stop. It doesn't fade the next morning. It doesn't heal with time or tea or some well-meaning therapy session. It sticks. It clings to everything. You start watching them like you're in a foreign film with no subtitles. Every gesture feels loaded. Every word sounds slightly mistranslated. That night after seeing Jasper, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the shadows dancing across the ceiling, and I kept hearing his voice. She talks about you like you're a ghost. It wasn't just cruel, it was revealing. It made me realize that maybe she had already rewritten me in her mind, turned me into a background character in her story, a footnote. And the more I thought about it, the more I started realizing how much I'd never known about Marin at all. It started with a box. We were both working from home one Friday, her in the bedroom, me in the dining room. I was looking for an old charger in the hallway closet when I saw it. A white shoebox, taped up, shoved way in the back under a stack of coats we never wore. It wasn't labeled. No dust. No reason for it to be hidden. I should have left it alone. But when your life is already unraveling, curiosity stops feeling dangerous and starts feeling like survival. I opened it. Inside were photographs, letters, a few concert wristbands, and a small envelope with M scribbled on the front in unfamiliar handwriting. The photos weren't mine. The places weren't ours. And the man in the pictures? He definitely wasn't me. He looked older, by maybe 10 years. Strong jaw, black and white tattoos snaking up his arms. In one photo, he was holding Marin around the waist, both of them laughing in what looked like a carnival parking lot at night. Her hair was different, longer, wilder, but her eyes were the same. Bright, free. It was like looking at a version of her that had been buried long before I ever met her. I sat there on the floor, slowly thumbing through the photos, piecing together a version of her life I'd never even heard mentioned. No names, no stories. Not once had she brought this man up. And the letters? They were intense, deep. One of them said, "I still dream about your voice when I'm in cities I hate. You made every place feel like home, even the loud ones." My stomach twisted, because it didn't feel like I was intruding on her past. It felt like I was discovering her real one. When I confronted her that night, I didn't yell. I just placed the box on the coffee table between us and asked, "Who was he?" She stared at it like it was radioactive. Her fingers twitched, then steadied. His name was Elliot. He was from another life. "That's not an answer," I said. She sighed. And then, for the first time in weeks, she looked genuinely vulnerable. Not guilty, not angry, just tired, like someone caught between two timelines. I met him when I was 23. We were together almost 3 years. He was my chaos. He made me feel alive and terrified, and like nothing else in the world existed outside of him. And then he disappeared. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone. "And you never mentioned him?" "What would have been the point?" she said. "You and I were building something stable. Predictable. He was a storm. You were a harbor." I didn't know whether to feel honored or insulted. She said it like I was a backup plan she'd tricked herself into loving. "I never stopped missing him," she admitted. "But that doesn't mean I didn't love you. I just loved you differently." That word again. Differently. Like love had gradations. Like hers came in shades of honesty and convenience. "You built this whole life with me," I said. "You married me. You said vows. And all this time, there was a part of you I never even touched." She looked at me, her face unreadable. "Maybe that's your fault too." It was subtle, barely above a whisper. But I heard it. That sharp edge. That impulse she had to slide blame under the door just before closing it. That night, I didn't sleep in the guest room. I drove 2 hours to my brother's house and didn't tell her I was leaving. I needed space, not just from her, but from the version of me I'd become around her. The quiet one. The peacemaker. The man always trying to forgive things before he fully understood what he was forgiving. But what haunted me wasn't Elliot. It wasn't even Jasper. It was the feeling that I was never really the main character in her story. Just a chapter. A bridge. A safe place to land after the fire, until she missed the heat again. And what she didn't know, what she still doesn't, is that I didn't take just the charger from that closet. I took the envelope with the M. And what I found inside it changed everything I thought I knew. I didn't open the envelope right away. I carried it with me for 3 days like it was made of glass, tucked between 2 receipts in my wallet like it might shatter if I looked at it wrong. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably a man's, sharp, angled, a little impatient. Just one letter. M. That single letter felt like it had more weight than all the words Marin had said to me in weeks. I knew whatever was inside that envelope wasn't meant for me. That made it sacred. and dangerous. It was midnight when I finally opened it. I was back at my brother's, lying awake on his guest bed, listening to the buzz of the ceiling fan, and thinking about all the versions of my marriage that might have existed if I had done one thing differently. Moved cities when she wanted to, listened more when she was silent, maybe even just asked the right question at the right time. But eventually, blame stops being productive. You just want to understand. That's what I told myself as I slowly unfolded the yellowed piece of paper. The first line hit me like a punch to the throat. If you're reading this, I guess I never had the guts to give it to you. It was from Elliot, the man from the photos. The one whose absence had haunted her more than my presence ever comforted her. And he hadn't disappeared, not the way she told it. Not entirely. He had written to her. At least once. And somehow, she kept it. Which meant she must have read it. Which meant every lie she told about closure was rehearsed with full knowledge of the truth. I left because I was afraid of what loving you too much might turn me into. You were the only person who ever made me consider giving up the parts of myself I thought were unchangeable. And that terrified me. I wasn't built for permanence. I was built to run. And I knew if I stayed, I'd ruin you. You were always too full of hope. I sat there reading that sentence over and over, until the words started to blur. I didn't know what I hated more, that Maren had been hurt like this once, or that she had used my love as a salve to erase it. Or maybe I hated how familiar the line sounded. Too full of hope. That's what I was. Even after all of this. Even now. Still hoping there was a version of the truth that would make this easier to live with. The letter continued. If years have gone by, and I'm still not beside you, I want you to know it wasn't because I stopped loving you. It was because I knew the damage I could do by staying would be worse than the pain of leaving. And that was when I felt it. The cold twist in my gut. This wasn't just some poetic goodbye. It was guilt. It was a preemptive confession. Elliot wasn't the one who vanished. Maren had let him go. Maybe even pushed him. Maybe because she saw something in herself she didn't want to admit was real. There was no return address. No date. Just a final line. I hope you find someone who can hold all the versions of you without breaking. I folded the letter and sat back, heart hammering like I'd run a mile. Because for the first time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't betrayed. I was terrified. Not of her past, not of what she'd hidden, but of the realization that I had never met all the versions of her, and I probably never would. The woman I married, the one who cried during documentaries and hated cilantro and told me I was the safest person she'd ever met, was just one layer. There were others. Versions who wrote love letters to ghosts. Versions who invited men into our home and said it didn't mean anything. Versions who stared me in the eye and said she needed someone else to feel real again. And if I didn't know those versions, if she kept them sealed in a box behind coats and years, what did that make me? A husband? A placeholder? A character in a role she needed filled at the time? I left the house the next morning without telling my brother. Drove for 3 hours to the cliffs outside Stonemore, a place Maren and I had once gone during our first year together. Back then, she said she loved how the wind there made her feel like she could blow away and be reborn. I sat there for hours, watching waves slam into rock, thinking about what it means to actually know someone. We all lie, I guess. We all curate versions of ourselves for the people we want to keep. But some people, they do more than hide things. They bury entire identities. And then they build a life with you on top of them, hoping you never dig too deep. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about an affair. This wasn't even about Elliot or Jasper. It was about a woman who never stopped rewriting her story, and a man, me, who let her edit mine too. But no more. She didn't know I had the letter. She didn't know I'd found the truth, or at least a sliver of it. And she certainly didn't know what I was about to do with it. It took me 3 days to drive back home. Not because of the distance, but because every hour felt like its own small war. I stopped in places we used to pass through together, old diners and gas stations that still held ghosts of her laugh, or the music we once sang off-key to. But this time, I didn't linger. I kept moving. Not because I wanted to run, but because I was finally done standing still. When I got back, Maren was in the kitchen, barefoot, stirring something on the stove like we hadn't just shattered everything in the universe. She looked up, surprised to see me. I set the envelope down on the counter between us, unfolded, exposed, no drama, just truth. She didn't touch it. Her eyes flicked over the handwriting, and I saw it. Not panic, not guilt, just resignation. like she'd always known this day would come. I should have told you, she said. I nodded. Yeah, but you didn't. We didn't fight. We didn't even raise our voices. There was nothing left to win. No points to score. I told her I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't confused. I just didn't want to live with someone who couldn't be seen without masks on. I told her I needed to be with someone who let me in, even when it was ugly. Someone who didn't make me beg for access to the truth. She started crying. Not the defensive kind, not the performative kind. Real tears. Silent. Steady. And for the first time, I realized she hadn't just lost me. She'd lost herself somewhere along the way, in the performances, in the reinventions, in the need to be everything to everyone, but never entirely herself to anyone. I didn't say anything else. I just packed a single suitcase. Clothes. My laptop. The first photo we ever took at the lake. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen table, not out of spite, but because I didn't want to carry symbols of something that had become a story we couldn't finish together. I got a small apartment on the edge of town. It's nothing special. Beige walls, noisy pipes, a view of a parking lot. But for the first time in years, I sleep without that invisible weight on my chest. I go on walks. I listen to records I'd forgotten I owned. I read books I never made time for. Sometimes I catch myself laughing at nothing, and I realize it's not because I'm happy all the time. It's because I'm not afraid anymore. Not of what I'll find, and not of who I'll be when I find it. Last week, I ran into someone at a bookstore. Her name's Dana. She asked me what I was reading, and we ended up talking for 2 hours in the little cafe by the window. I haven't told her anything about Marin. I don't want to bring that energy into something new. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Dana knows me as the guy who buys books based on the cover art and eats scones with a fork. That's enough for now. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with fanfare or revelation. It comes in the quiet, in the spaces you finally claim back for yourself. I've stopped trying to be the version of me that kept everything together. I've started being the version that lets go, not out of weakness, but out of strength. Out of the simple, powerful truth that you can love someone deeply and still choose yourself in the end. I don't hate Marin. I hope she finds peace. I hope she becomes the version of herself that doesn't need to disappear to feel alive. But that's not my road anymore. Mine is forward. And for the first time in a long, long time, I like where it's going.